The stress was taking its toll. I barely slept. At night, I tossed and turned in bed staring at the ceiling, but the moment I closed my eyes, anxious thoughts flooded my mind. I heard my phone ringing even when it was silent, as if the sound had been burned into my consciousness. Every morning, I woke up with a weight in my chest, knowing that today would bring another battle. My phone never stopped ringing. Reporters demanded comments, asking the same questions over and over. What will you do next? How do you respond to the situation? Are you really canceling the festival? I tried to answer calmly, but each time the words came out with more effort. Concerned suppliers called, asking if they should still prepare their products, wondering if they would even have a chance to sell them. I could hear the fear and uncertainty in their voices. Some had already lost money buying ingredients, counting on festival sales, and I couldn't blame them. Before we begin, please share in the comments if you've ever encountered a Karen in real life. If so, we'd love to hear your story and where you're from. Also, please help us spread this video because it's important for as many people as possible to learn about the Karen problem. To do this, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It only takes a few seconds for you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Enjoy the video. I've lived on this farm for as long as I can remember. It's not just land to me, it's my history, my family's legacy, and a labor of love passed down through generations. The Turners have owned this farm for nearly a century. Our hands shaped the soil. Our sweat and determination kept the crops flourishing. It's not the biggest farm in the county, nor is it the most modern, but it's home. And more importantly, it's the heart of something even greater. The Harvest Fest. Every autumn, when the leaves turn golden and the crisp scent of fall fills the air, I host the town's annual Harvest Fest. What started as a small gathering of local farmers and their families has grown into a cherished tradition. It's more than a fair. It's a celebration of community, of hard work, of the land itself. Families from all over the county come to enjoy the festivities. There are hay rides, pumpkin patches, live country music, homemade pies, cider tastings, and an open-air market where farmers sell fresh produce, honey, and artisanal goods. The festival is something the entire town looks forward to, a bright spot before the cold winter months settle in. Local businesses thrive during this time. The town's diners, bed and breakfasts, and small boutiques see a boom in visitors. Kids run through corn mazes, couples dance under string lights, and everyone shares in the warmth that only a tight-knit community can offer. But not everyone sees the Harvest Fest as a blessing. Just a few miles from my farm, past the open fields and into a meticulously planned neighborhood, stands an exclusive gated community called Oakridge Estates. It's a place where the houses are all designed to look pristine and uniform, where the lawns are perfectly manicured, and where the residents pride themselves on their refined living. And at the head of the Homeowners Association, ruling over it with an iron fist, is Karen Whitmore. Karen is a woman who values control. She moved to Oakridge Estates from the city a few years back, bringing with her an obsession with order, prestige, and property values. The moment she arrived, she began making changes. Stricter HOA rules, harsher penalties for unkempt lawns, and mandatory neighborhood meetings where she dictated the vision for the community. She believes Oakridge Estates is a sanctuary for the wealthy and cultured, a place that should be untouched by the messy and chaotic outside world. And in her mind, the Harvest Fest is a direct threat to that sanctuary. She despises the festival for many reasons. First, there's the traffic. Every year, the roads leading to my farm become clogged with cars, slowing down the pristine quiet of Oakridge Estates. Then, there's the noise, the music, the laughter, the occasional firework display. But worst of all, in Karen's opinion, is the kind of people the festival attracts. It brings in outsiders, she said once at an HOA meeting, wrinkling her nose as if the very word disgusted her. People from other towns, people who don't belong here. She speaks in vague terms, never outright saying what she means, but everyone in the room understands. To Karen, the festival brings in the wrong kind of crowd. People she sees as beneath her, as unrefined, as unwelcome in her carefully curated world. And year after year, she's tried to find a way to shut it down. At first, it was little things. Complaints about noise violations, requests for stricter zoning regulations, letters to the mayor about safety concerns. But none of it worked. The town loves the festival, and I've always complied with regulations. If anything, I've gone out of my way to ensure that everything is up to code, that the festival is safe and well organized. This year, though, Karen is determined. She has a plan, one that she believes will finally put an end to the Harvest Fest once and for all. I, on the other hand, have no idea of the storm brewing on the horizon. As I stand in the middle of my farm, looking out over the fields that will soon be filled with festival goers, I feel nothing but pride. I love this land. I love this town. And I love the tradition my family has built. But I have no idea that this year's festival will be the fight of my life. It started with a letter. A crisp white envelope arrived in my mailbox bearing the official seal of the city's health department. The letter inside was filled with legal jargon, but the message was clear. A formal complaint had been filed against the Harvest Fest, citing multiple sanitary violations that needed to be addressed immediately. If they weren't, the event would be shut down. I had no doubt who was behind it. Karen had finally made her move, using her connections in City Hall to pull whatever string she could. I wasn't worried, though. Not at first. I knew for a fact that my farm met every health regulation. The food vendors had all passed inspections. The facilities were clean. This was nothing more than a bureaucratic roadblock, and I was ready to fight it. But then, more trouble followed. First, a petition started circulating among the residents of Oakridge Estates, claiming that the festival was driving down property values. It was full of exaggerated claims, excessive noise pollution, unwanted foot traffic, and even a ridiculous accusation that festival attendees were littering in the gated community. Karen had managed to convince a good number of homeowners that my festival was a threat to their exclusive lifestyle. Then came the inspections. One by one, different departments started showing up at my farm. The fire marshal arrived to check the safety of our hayrides. The tax authorities started combing through my financial records, looking for any discrepancies. The health department returned with a sudden, urgent inspection of all the food vendors. Each time, the inspectors found nothing serious, but the constant harassment was taking its toll. The worst part was the effect it had on my team. My farmhands, the vendors, the musicians, we all felt the pressure. Some of the food trucks pulled out, unwilling to risk fines or shutdowns. A few of the bands canceled, fearing the festival might not even happen. I had to personally call business owners and beg them to stay on board, promising that we'd push through. But how could I make promises when I wasn't sure myself? Word started spreading in town. I could feel the tension in the air. People were hesitant to buy vendor spots or commit to coming. My vendors and musicians were getting nervous. What if the festival got shut down at the last minute? Small businesses that depended on this event worried about taking financial losses. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, the rumors started. I heard Jack's farm isn't even licensed properly. Someone said his produce tested positive for contaminants. You didn't hear this from me, but I think he's cutting corners on safety. The rumors spread like wildfire. They weren't just about my festival anymore. They were about me, my family, my farm. I'd spent years building a reputation for quality and trust, and in a matter of days, Karen had people doubting it. I couldn't believe it. Karen had gone beyond legal roadblocks. She was attacking my reputation. She wanted to turn the town against me, to make people afraid to support me. I fought back the only way I knew how, with the truth. I called a meeting with the town council. I stood in the city council chamber, feeling the tension boiling under my skin. In front of me was a long wooden table where the council members sat, the mayor, the city attorney, the head of the trade department, and several other officials. To my left, directly across from me, sat Karen with an arrogant expression, her arms crossed over her chest. She confidently awaited her victory, but I had no intention of backing down. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, striving to keep my voice steady, though a storm raged inside me, "I am here to refute the false accusations made against my festival. I have brought all the necessary documents proving that Harvest Fest fully complies with city laws and regulations." I laid out a folder in front of me. pulling out copies of permits, supplier contracts, and sanitation inspections. First, I continued, unfolding one of the documents, we have a permit to hold the event, signed earlier this year. Second, the health inspection recently conducted a review, and here is their report. No violations found. Third, I shifted my gaze to Karen, the documents I requested from the administration indicate that the complaints inspectors used to try and shut down the festival came from the same person. I pulled out another sheet and handed it to the mayor. All complaints were filed by Karen Davis. They contain no concrete evidence, only accusations and assumptions. We understand that bureaucratic procedures require responding to citizens' concerns, but given their systematic nature and lack of factual basis, these claims seem more like a personal vendetta than genuine concern for the city. The mayor frowned at the documents and then looked at Karen. Miss Davis, what do you have to say? I just want everything to follow the rules, she exclaimed. This festival creates chaos, noise, traffic jams. People in our community don't like it. What community are you referring to? One of the council members interjected. Because hundreds of local residents attend this festival every year. It's important for businesses, farmers, and tourism. It attracts crowds, Karen insisted. It's unsafe. I couldn't hold back and stepped forward. Unsafe? My voice was firm. Are you saying that a farmers' festival, which we've held for decades, has suddenly become a threat? Karen, you call yourself a protector of local interests, but this festival supports small businesses. It's an opportunity for farmers and entrepreneurs to earn a living, for families to enjoy a tradition. We're not creating problems, we're building a community. Karen opened her mouth, but she had nothing to say. Silence hung in the air. The mayor sighed, set the papers aside, and looked at me. Mr. Carter, all your documents are in order. The city will not obstruct the Harvest Fest. However, we ask that all safety measures be strictly followed to prevent any incidents. Of course, I nodded. Karen slammed her folder shut, pressing her lips into a thin line. Her plan was falling apart. The next day, I headed to the local radio station to address the town. At the entrance, I was met by Dan Harris, the host of Good Morning Oakridge, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a warm smile. Jack, good to see you. He shook my hand. How are you feeling after yesterday's clash with the city council? Honestly, exhausted but not broken. I chuckled. We walked into the studio. Dan turned on the microphone and began his introduction. Folks, today we have Jack Carter, the organizer of Harvest Fest, with us. This year, the festival has been at the center of some serious controversy. Jack, tell us what's going on. I leaned closer to the microphone. Dan, I want every resident of Oakridge to know the festival is happening. Despite all attempts to shut it down, despite bureaucratic pressure, we're not giving up. This isn't just an event, it's our tradition. It's a chance for farmers, small business owners, and artists to connect with the community and share their work. Dan nodded. A lot of listeners have called in asking how they can help. Is there anything people can do? Yes. I sat up straight. Come to the festival. Support local vendors, musicians, and artists. Show that Oakridge is a community that won't be bullied. If we stand together, no complaints or threats can break us. Dan smiled. You heard it, folks. The festival lives on. Jack Carter isn't backing down, and neither should we. Thanks, Jack. Best of luck with Harvest Fest. I left the studio feeling proud. Karen had tried to destroy us, but now the whole town knew the truth, and I was sure they would stand by us. But I was wrong. The stress was taking its toll. I barely slept. At night, I tossed and turned in bed, staring at the ceiling, but the moment I closed my eyes, anxious thoughts flooded my mind. I heard my phone ringing even when it was silent, as if the sound had been burned into my consciousness. Every morning I woke up with a weight in my chest, knowing that today would bring another battle. My phone never stopped ringing. Reporters demanded comments, asking the same questions over and over. What will you do next? How do you respond to the situation? Are you really canceling the festival? I tried to answer calmly, but each time the words came out with more effort. Concerned suppliers called, asking if they should still prepare their products, wondering if they would even have a chance to sell them. I could hear the fear and uncertainty in their voices. Some had already lost money buying ingredients, counting on festival sales. And I couldn't blame them. City officials wouldn't leave me alone either. Another complaint, another inspection request. I already knew where it was coming from, but each time I had to defend myself, proving that I wasn't breaking any laws. They called with official tones, but I could tell they were just as tired of this as I was. One of them, lowering his voice, once muttered, "Jack, you know who's behind this. Our hands are tied." I knew this wasn't over. My wife Sarah tried to support me. She made me tea, insisted I rest. When I sat at the table staring at my phone, she gently touched my hand and said, "Jack, you have to take care of yourself. If you break, who will fight for the festival?" I nodded, smiled, but I saw the worry in her eyes. She knew me better than anyone and understood how much this meant to me. This fight was no longer just about the festival. It was about our way of life, about what we had built for years. It was about our community, the people who depended on this event, the tradition passed down through generations. And if I gave up now, what would be left? I took a deep breath, turned off my phone, closed my eyes for a moment, and allowed myself to sit in silence. Then I stood up, dialed a number, and said firmly, "We'd better cancel the festival. Otherwise, the financial losses for everyone involved could be too great. I can't take that risk." The morning of the festival was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Normally, by now, my farm would be buzzing with vendors setting up stalls, the smell of grilled meats and baked goods filling the air, kids running around in excitement. But today, there was nothing, just an empty field and a deep, hollow silence that settled into my chest like a stone. I had done it. I had officially canceled the Harvest Fest. It hadn't been an easy decision. After weeks of fighting Karen's endless attacks, city hall complaints, bogus inspections, slanderous rumors, I had reached my breaking point. The final straw had come when half of my biggest vendors pulled out, fearing legal trouble. I simply couldn't risk putting on the festival if there was even a chance it would be shut down mid-event. I had to accept defeat, or so I thought, because just when I resigned myself to the worst, something strange started happening. It began with a single food truck. Right at the edge of Oakridge Estates, the elite gated community Karen ruled like a queen, an old blue food truck rolled up and parked just outside the entrance. I recognized it immediately. Benny's BBQ. Benny had been one of my most loyal vendors, serving slow-cooked ribs and brisket at every Harvest Fest for the past 10 years. I walked over to him, confused. "Benny, what are you doing?" He grinned. "What's it look like, Jack? Festival or no festival, people still gotta eat." Before I could argue, another truck pulled up, then another, then a fourth. Within an hour, nearly a dozen food vendors, many of whom had backed out of the festival just days earlier, had gathered at the edge of the gated community, lining the street in a makeshift row. Then the musicians started showing up. At first, it was just a single guitarist setting up on the sidewalk, strumming a folksy tune. But then came the violinist, the banjo player, and a whole damn bluegrass band that had been scheduled to perform at the festival. They weren't inside my farm, they weren't on official festival grounds, but they were here. And they were playing. Word spread fast, faster than I could process it. By noon, people were pouring in. Locals, families, business owners, farmers who had been planning to sell their produce. Nobody had coordinated this. Nobody had planned a replacement event. But somehow the Harvest Fest had transformed into something new, something wilder, a full-blown block party. The road leading to Oakridge Estates became packed with people. Pop-up stalls appeared, selling fresh cider, honey, homemade jams. Kids ran around laughing with candy apples in hand. The smells of barbecue, kettle corn, and fresh bread filled the air. It wasn't just a festival anymore. It was an act of defiance. And then came the press. Someone from the local newspaper must have caught wind of what was happening because before long, there was a news crew filming everything. A reporter, one I vaguely recognized, stood with a microphone, dramatically describing the scene. "Here we are at what should have been the canceled Harvest Fest, where local residents have taken matters into their own hands. What was meant to be a peaceful seasonal celebration has turned into a battle between small-town traditions and the elite residents of Oakridge Estates." She turned toward the camera, gesturing toward the community's towering iron gates. Is this the death of small-town culture? Are wealthy elites really trying to erase generations of farming heritage? And that was when Karen appeared. I saw her marching out of the gates, flanked by a couple of HOA board members, her face redder than a sun-dried tomato. She was furious. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "This is illegal!" she screeched, pointing wildly at the vendors. "You need a permit for this kind of gathering. You can't just—" The reporter turned to her, microphone ready. "Ma'am, are you saying you're against local businesses and family-owned farms?" Karen blinked. "What? No, that's not—" "And yet sources confirm that you were behind multiple complaints against this festival. Some say you even pressured city officials to shut it down. What do you have to say to the farmers and small business owners who rely on this event to make a living?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, but no words came out. The crowd watched, waiting. Some people had their phones out, recording. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice shouted, "Leave Jack alone!" And just like that, a wave of cheers erupted. Karen turned a deeper shade of crimson. "That's it! I'm calling the sheriff!" She pulled out her phone and made the call right then and there in front of everyone. "Yes, Sheriff, I need you to shut down an illegal gathering, immediately." It wasn't long before we heard the sirens. The sheriff, good old Sheriff Tucker, pulled up in his squad car, stepped out, and took one look at the scene. He surveyed the food trucks, the musicians, the families dancing in the street. Then he took off his sunglasses, exhaled, and walked over to Karen. "Karen," he said, voice calm but firm, "what exactly seems to be the problem here?" Karen jabbed a finger toward me. "He's hosting a festival without a permit. It's against the law. You have to shut this down." Sheriff Tucker scratched his chin. "I don't know, Karen. Doesn't look like a festival to me. Looks like a bunch of folks enjoying a public street. But, he turned to me. "Jack, are you charging admission to this?" I shook my head. "No, sir." He turned to the vendors. "Y'all selling on private property?" They all shook their heads. Sheriff Tucker sighed, looking back at Karen. "Well then, looks to me like there ain't a damn thing illegal about it." The crowd erupted in applause. Karen's face twisted in fury, but she was out of moves. She had lost. And as I stood there taking in the sight of my town standing together, I realized something. Karen had tried to destroy the festival, but in the end, she had made it bigger than ever. The Harvest Fest wasn't just about my farm anymore. It was about all of us. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story and how the farmer and the people defeated Karen and the HOA. Subscribe and leave a comment below. Your opinion means a lot to us.